All right, my next guest is Mike Warren. I've known the guy for a long time. He's a rock-solid individual. He is a combat veteran, and he is an international man of mystery. Mike, thanks for coming on to the show today.
Happy to be here, Andy.
Just for those listeners out there who may not be as familiar with you as I am, could you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about your background, your history, what you've done in the martial arts, as well as your military service and your law enforcement experience?
Okay, sure thing. Well, to begin with, I jumped right out of high school and into jump school, so to speak, with the Army back in 1996. My first unit of assignment was 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group. I worked there in an MI capacity, ran communications for several years, picked up the Spanish language there, fought in the activities that we had against the nefarious drug cartels of various Central and South American countries, all the way up till the first consolidation phase of Afghanistan in my active duty stint. I was the head combatants instructor for all 7 Special Forces Group for the past 4.5 years in the unit. I had a break in service where I immediately went to fun places like Kosovo, Bosnia, Sarajevo, Iraq, Afghanistan as a private military contractor for some of our government intelligence agencies, and then decided that I just was too far away from the uniform for too long. Joined up in the North Carolina National Guard in the military intelligence capacity and combatants instructor, and then 2.5 years ago transferred up to the Federal Reserves, and I'm now a civil affairs team leader, and I'm also the brigade combatants instructor. As far as my martial arts experience goes, I was started about the age of 5.5, with my father in Isshin Ryu and various other Japanese and Okinawan martial arts as he was studying them in the Navy. After my parents split, my mother remarried to a Marine. I continued to learn boxing, kickboxing. I picked up multiple black belts in various arts from Taekwondo, Tangsudo, Hapkido, covering a lot of my Korean background, so Aikido, Aikido-Jitsu. On the mixed martial arts side of the house, I'm under Mark Shop, who runs Pitts Pen, which works with Boss Rutan. We have Judo Jean LaBelle on board with that. I'm a 4-stripe purple in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu system there. I'm also fall under the Gracie system. I'm a Modern Army Combatives Level 4 Master Combatives Instructor. I'm also Lines Instructor certified from Juan Don Vito, the Marine that invented the previous incarnation of the Marine Corps hand-to-hand system. Also a secondary black belt in the mixed martial arts systems under masters like David Chen, which teach arts like Xingyi, Hop Guard, Chobi Foot, Tai Chi. A lot of very eclectic systems. In one short term, I like to consider myself basically a martial arts craftsman whore, as I try to get as much as I can and study it. I'm under folks like Danny Nosanto with my Filipino knife and stick fighting, and hold a 3rd-degree black belt through that lineage, and just basically try to ground as much as I can. I decided about 1.5 years ago that I wasn't doing enough in the local community after all of the time spent overseas, and decided to knock out some college degrees and put myself through police academy. And now I'm working in the capacity of a special police officer, actually here in lovely downtown Fayetteville and Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Well, and I think it's notable too. I actually, even though we kind of served in the same area at Fort Bragg, as part of the same community, we never actually met there. I actually met you through your martial arts school. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's one of those weird things where it's such a small community, but there's so many professionals running through there all the time with our constant TDYs and deployment, that when we finally got to meet, you came out to the academy, put on an outstanding seminar, I might add. All the students loved it and brought a unique aspect of reality to our reality-based systems. And that's one of the things I think where you and I most clicked was we both agreed, as much as there is a form of training in place through the Modern Army Combatives that's better than nothing at all, that we also appreciate it for what it is, a sport-based system, and we're not simply determined to send soldiers into harm's way with a sport-based fair play fighting mentality. And we were both simultaneously working on our resolution, so to speak, on how to fix that issue. Mine being a Urban Combatives program, which is ultimate reality-based attack neutralization, and your programs, which you've also been published for, get your books out, and a great system online for a lot of people to pick up and just find out what reality-based fighting is all about.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's been an interesting relationship between us. I'm actually glad to have you as a friend. I'm very glad we met. And I'm excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here.
I actually have a couple for you because see, I love getting guys like you on the show because you've been around. You've been there. You've done it. You're a teacher. You're a lifelong student. And to me, I think a lot of the people that tune in to the show, they're looking for little gems of information that they can get out there to implement to their own training regimen, so that they can become better as well. Just like we're always looking for that advantage and just that extra bit of knowledge. I think a lot of our listeners are the same way. So I love to get guys like you on here. You're a good dude, and you're a guy who sees the value of being that constant student. You're a lifelong student. You're not just the guy who straps on the black belt and says, I will teach you everything you know, but not everything I know. So I love to have guys like you on here because you're humble and you're a true warrior.
Well, I try to live up to what that ideology represents and stands for today, and I try to pass it on to my students. In fact, I don't even call me master or Shidoshi if it's not coach. It's teacher of warrior ways. So there's no sensei running around howling unless it's something that's mutually polite. And I try to take away aspects of the teaching of the martial arts that I feel like a class line or a delineation between student and teachers, because I learn, I think, even more as a teacher than I do as a student, if ever, because I'm always seeing the way that the mind's understanding something, and that can't help but foster a natural lifetime learning process, because as soon as you start to teach something and you recognize it in a new way, and you're actually to see and understand another person's perception and how that affects their thought process, you can't do anything but grow from it, and it's just kind of addictive,
Yeah, I agree. I know in the time, the years that I've been teaching, the times that I learn the most, actually, most cases it happens when I'm with the biggest learning challenges. The people who are having the hardest time learning, a lot of times cause us to learn the most because we're digging deep, to try and get the point across to them, and we are seeing those things, as you said, in a way that we never saw it before because we're forced to based on that individual's learning challenges.
And actually, hearing you say that reminds me of one of probably the most unique challenges I've ever had in a student. I have a few that are handicapped in various ways, injured limbs. Some soldiers came back missing this or that. And I actually have a student who teaches at Fayetteville State University who is completely blind, has been for years. And I think it took about 2.5 months, but we actually have him at a point of open mid-contact sparring with boxing and kickboxing now, even though he's blind. And finding a way to teach that kind of intuition into him and a manner that he can actually enjoy it without getting too roughed up over, it definitely gives you a different perspective on reading your opponent, to say the least.
That's absolutely amazing to me. When I was growing up, obviously I had been wrestling since just as soon as I joined school. And when I was in junior high school, I had a wrestling coach, very interesting individual. His name was Tommy O'Rourke, and it was funny because he was built like a fire plug, about as wide as he was tall, just a muscle, and a great coach, and he had an excellent way of getting information across to us. And one day he came in with a bunch of blindfolds, and basically he had explained to us that the best wrestler he had ever coached was completely blind. And he explained it to us that, how the coaches are always out there and they're telling you, hey, go for this technique, go for that technique, you got it right there. Well, he explained to us that a lot of times the coach is out there, he's out there yelling that to us, and we're not listening because we're fooled by what our eyes are seeing and what our ego is telling us. There's maybe that technique that you really like a lot, and you want to do it because it's going to be spectacular. And you're going for that, but you're giving up what you already have in your hands. And the coach kind of explained it to us that this wrestler never had that problem because he couldn't see. So he could only go with what he actually had in his hand already, per se. And he would make us wrestle blindfolded, but I was absolutely amazed because he said that every year that kid wrestled, he went to the States, and he won states. So to me, that's just always, and I know he wouldn't lie. I trust him. So that amazed me, and what you're doing with your student, that's equally amazing to me, because kickboxing and boxing is completely different than wrestling. In wrestling, you're attached to this person already. You're grappling. It's close quarters. You can feel that person. And kickboxing and boxing, you're starting from a completely different range. So my hat's off to you.
Yeah, that indeed was the biggest challenge. A tip for somebody that wants to actually work into that, to do some light contact or some continuous sparring with a partner to kind of feel that out when you're blindfolded, is think of the concept they use in Chi Sao or in some of the Wing Chun drills of sticky hands, where you have that initial contact. You don't know when or where it's coming from, but you have to follow it back to its source. And the second that first left, right, or knee or foot makes contact, because you're holding a tight defensive posture, and his actual fighting stance looked completely different to reflect that kind of defensiveness. But the second you made contact, and that hand or foot that went out is coming back with him attached to it and attached to you. And then the striking and stuff would ensue from there, include grappling and takedowns.
That's amazing. I would love to see some of the drills you're doing with that guy.
Absolutely. We'll have to see about getting him on camera here sometime soon.
I think that would be cool, and I think everybody would be also very interested in seeing some of that. Mike, I got a couple questions for you. First of all, you are probably the guy to ask about this. What is your definition of combatives?
Well, I think the term combatives is actually a misnomer. The way that it's taught to the military community and nowadays is actually completely different from the way it was taught during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Combatives nowadays is more of a term for a sport-based mixed martial arts system that has its solid foundations in the blue belt applications of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brought in by the Gracies. Now, not to talk down Gracie Jiu-Jitsu by any means. I think it's a spectacular means of grappling, and it's just a staple that every good fighter has to know it nowadays. But combat itself is the key word on the combatives, which means to rapidly, violently cause the death and the dismemberment, if need be, of any enemy or threat that's before you. That means getting in, ending the fight, whatever it may take. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they hear combatives, they think just simply hand-to-hand. That's not the case. We incorporate knives, sticks, bayonets, grenades. It's just because you're within the range of hand-to-hand and knuckle-to-knuckle doesn't mean that bullets and bombs aren't still flying at you. And it's a mindset more than anything else. The Marine Corps has a really good adage where they say, one mind, any weapon. And that's the way that they train in many of their warrior tasks. I think it's something that's kind of lacking from a lot of combatives programs. Now, there are soldiers and warriors out there that are instilling this in their students, but they're kind of far and few in between, mostly because the way that the programs are set up now. You'll have somebody who just came in off the street. They'll have 5 days, 40 hours worth of training, and they're considered a level 1 instructor. Go forth and teach. Oh, you want to teach guys at that level? Well, here's a 10-day course with weekends off as well. And to have a master combatives instructor, it's another 3-week and a 4-week course respectively. And the 4-week course is more paperwork than anything. It's kind of a snapshot into that world that I think where combatives itself belies what's truly supposed to represent and instill in our soldiers.
I agree. I love a lot of the old Sykes Fairbairn stuff. I mean, that stuff is just Rex Applegate. I really am inspired by a lot of those types of techniques. What do you think about those things?
Well, I think they're spot on. They're so simple a Marine can do it, as I like to say. And it's something that's direct. It's straightforward. There's no antsing about. There's no sense of fair play. They teach you fight dirty, spit, throw dirt in their eyes, bite, sneak up behind them, stab them across the throat, and keep stabbing until they stop twitching. And the techniques are practiced in a manner that will reflect the kind of quick, brutal, violent activities that are required to kill an enemy on the battlefield, to neutralize a threat, to fight and defend your own life. If you look at the modern-day warriors like the British Gurkha regiments, and you see how they incorporate that in, you'll see a completely different mindset from many other armies today.
Yeah, are you familiar with the Gurkha Bishnu Kumar?
Yes, I am actually.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing individual. Just kind of throw that out there for some of the listeners who may not be familiar with who Bishnu Kumar is. Actually wrote an article about the kukri a while back, a couple of years ago. But I mentioned Bishnu Kumar, and Bishnu Kumar is like this one little Gurkha dude who basically he's a hero. The guy goes on to this railroad train, and he's just been discharged from the Nepali army, or the Gurkha army, and while he's on the train's getting robbed by like 16 bandits, and they're all armed. And Bishnu Kumar breaks out his kukri, and he goes to town on these guys and kills all of them. And he ended up turning into like a sort of national hero over that.
And that's not a rare incident amongst the Gurkhas as well, considering the tales of the soldiers that are being overrun in Afghanistan, running out of ammunition, grabbing their kukri, grabbing a base plate from a crew-served machine gun, and going to town on people and fighting off overwhelming numbers to the point where what was once an overwhelming force is now in full retreat. And it's a common day thing. And when you speak to these individuals or you read their interviews, they keep it rather simple. We were in danger. I saw this person might get killed, and I did everything I could to end that threat. And it's just a process that's backed up with vigorous, intense training.
Keep it simple, stupid. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely. Every time I hear it, it catches my attention. I think I hear my name at the end.
Yeah, me too. Believe me, my knuckles drag when I walk, brother. You're smart. Let's see. I got another question for you here, and I think that again, you're just the guy to ask this because you're one of those unique individuals who has martial arts experience. You have the military experience and training. You've also got the law enforcement background, so you're a very interesting individual who can see this from many different perspectives. And my question to you is, what's the difference between combatives and defensive tactics as it is being taught to law enforcement officers today in your own definition?
Well, DT, or defensive tactics, here in North Carolina in our Justice and Education and Training Center, we call it SCAT, or Subject Control, Arrest, and Tactics. And I think that kind of the key words here are defensive and tactics. It doesn't really mean techniques. It doesn't really mean ways. It's, as most academies would push out, a very limited number of hours or weeks that are incorporated into their training on trying to just basically keep the officer alive in a very violent, dangerous situation, constantly outnumbered. They're constantly in a position to be ambushed. And it's more or less designed to neutralize the danger to the officer, because their ultimate duty in service to defending our constitutional rights and looking out for people is, of course, first themselves. That's, I will come home. I will make it to my son or daughter, my wife, or my family. I will make it back home at the end of the shift. And the focus is primarily on getting an individual in cuffs, getting to a position of dominance, and finding ways to manipulate a person or persons to be able to stop them from being able to get their hands in their pockets or get a hold of weapons or to fight through to you. Where combatives is, or true combatives, I should rather say, is designed on ending a threat permanently, quickly, efficiently. The lethal force is the first and best choice, because you can always decide to dial it down. For example, shooting, we look at targets in the World War II period, 1940s, 1950s, and there were circular targets, and we saw the actual number of effective shots fired on a human being was astronomically different from what it should have been as far as ammo expenditure, just by sheer luck. So they decided to start changing the way the silhouettes were shaped to start to condition people to be able to shoot, and we see in the 60s and 70s that those accuracy rates went way up. So the training became more reality-based. You didn't see that necessarily in the hand-to-hand aspects. So with the law enforcement community out there, once you get your basic training, it's on the individual officer and on the individual agency or department to actually continue that training. There's an annual requirement to do a little bit of this or that. They touch upon use of force as their key guideline, where in combatives you're going to have survival as your key guideline, and where they ultimately try to instill in the officer to fight through any kind of adversity to try to survive. Everything's based on a soft hands, strong voice, work yourself up to a lethal use of force if need be, or in combatives, it's quite the exact opposite.
Wow, Mike, you are just so well spoken and so read in on that subject. Hey, since I've got you talking about this subject, let's talk about what's going on in Ferguson and New York. What's your take on the justification for the use of force in both the Ferguson case first, and then, finish off with tell me what you think about the whole chokehold incident in New York?
Okay. Well, to start with, I'm one of the maybe 0.001% of the population that actually waited until the grand jury reports, all of the interviews, witness statements, the scene photographs and evidence and everything was actually published to look through to get my idea and opinion. And it's, again, just my opinion because I personally was not the officer in danger or directly there on the scene. Now, one would say eyewitnesses there have conflicting stories. Well, some of the eyewitnesses were involved in strong-arm robbery with this criminal just minutes prior to their encounter with the officer that led to Mike Brown's fatal shooting. And other individuals or people that were there and had various backgrounds. And there's over 80 pages worth of these statements. So it's one of those things that just takes time. And let's face it, the average media consumer here today on the internet and YouTube warriors, so to speak, are not very well versed with patience. So it's something that they are just not going to do. They're going to form an opinion based upon their, what I like to call media bias and confirmation bias. And that's the idea that the media is out to basically sell a story. And they get money based upon the kind of reactions they get from the crowd, to get people to follow in, to interview their so-called experts and wannabe witnesses and everyone else. And at the same time, they have audiences that suffer very, very much from what's called confirmation bias. And that's, in a nutshell, hey, I believe this. I'm going to look for things that back up my opinion and reject any possible evidence that's to the contrary that might actually force me to look at something objectively. And that's something that we're ripe with throughout all of our social media outlets. And I think that's what we have here with the Ferguson case. I looked at the information, to me it was black and white, correct and justified use of force. And Officer Darren Wilson was lucky to survive the conflict alive, given the size difference, the sudden ambush, the sheer force and strength of these blows and strikes that were delivered to him before Mike Brown even grabbed for his pistol and tried to shoot him by aiming it into his pelvis and up against his thigh, before he was able to fight the pistol down towards the bottom of the vehicle and then put the first round through the door. And I've seen where the blood splatters were inside of the vehicle, the reports where he tried to call for assistance while fighting, and the radio had been, of course, knocked over to other channels while Mike Brown was inside of the vehicle reaching through and striking. And looking at it and the public's reaction, it's completely disproportionate to what the incident required. You have individuals that are paid, that are bussed in from outside of states, outside of the city, that under the guise of peaceful protesting start setting fire to local small businesses, to destroying the local community, to violent protests, to attacking people at random, to advocating violence against law enforcement across the nation. And it's kind of sickening, really, just to see how much racial disparity and hate is being baited in by folks like Sharpton and folks like Jackson. I mean, where they go, there's hate to follow. And it's kind of disturbing. But I do think that the more information got out, it took a period of weeks to even get to that point. There are enough people that at least kept their cool head, so to speak, to actually look into the situation and generally believe that it was a correct and justified decision by the grand jury to not have any sufficient evidence to charge the officer in wrongdoing.
Well, I got to tell you, Mike, me being number one, I teach defensive tactics. I used to teach defensive tactics a lot to law enforcement. I've kind of stepped away from that, probably particularly over the last year. But I still teach it to like security professionals, diplomatic security, protective specialists that go overseas, so on and so forth. And I always have been, and I still am, super critical when it comes to law enforcement personnel. First of all, I respect cops that are doing the right thing, upholding the Constitution, serving and protecting the peace as they're supposed to. But there's just a lot of bad seeds out there, which have really made me even more critical about cops. But looking at the Ferguson situation, there's, like you said, it was black and white once we got all the data in there. Three things: ability, opportunity, and intent. And you hit every one of those things when you were describing the situation as it unfolded between Mr. Brown and obviously the officer involved with the shooting. These are things that people have to understand: ability, opportunity, and intent. You know, Michael Brown had a huge size disparity between him and that officer, and he used that disparity to his advantage by ambushing the cop, taking the opportunity, that relative positioning, you know, and he showed his intent by different actions. They all add up, man, and I think it completely makes it valid, and I'm so glad that the decision was made in favor of the officer. Even though I am critical to law enforcement professionals because I believe they have a greater responsibility than most people, I'll tell you, man, I will side any day with the officer who's doing his job and is able to protect himself within those ramifications. You know, not somebody who's going above and beyond or overboard. You know, because I think you could probably agree.
Fully, it's about protecting yourself and others. And any time that you're using force, and just telling someone to stop or calling them over to ask some questions about a situation is potentially violating their constitutional rights. So you need to do so within the manner of the law. And I think a lot of the frustration that people have is they don't realize that the folks that they put into office, politicians, are the ones that are creating these laws. Law enforcement are simply charged to enforce them. That's what their oath involves. Now, it's supposed to be enforced within the limits of the United States Constitution, and you'll have states that are more foreign country than they are American, like California, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, and a few of these other just oddball states that just completely throw the Constitution out the window. In fact, I've been offered law enforcement positions in some of these places, and they were six-figure starting salary out of the academy, and I just absolutely could not do them. I could not pick them up, and I told them I could not, in all good conscience, keep the oath I took as a soldier or the oath I took as a law enforcement professional and actually work in that state and enforce the laws that they're going to expect me by nature of the job to enforce. And the people that are out on the streets, a lot of the individuals that are most vocal at first are those that are most seeking to get away with breaking the law. And the way that they have their frustrations met with the support of ignorant people that, and I say ignorant is they look specifically for confirmation bias from the biased media, and they go out and they're acting out in this manner, and they don't realize that it's just a natural result from their electoral choices, the people that they put in office, the policies that they profess to support, and while they do have an effect in everyone's life, whether it be tax rates, whether it be programs that you're forced to enroll in or disenroll in, or the way that the laws are down on the streets from weapons carry to simple jaywalking charges, as it were. And it's up to the individual citizen to remove those bad apples out of office.
I agree with you. And at the same time, you know, my hat's off to a lot of those officers out there who, like yourself, and thanks a lot for standing by that oath that you swore to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My hat's off to those guys in New York, for example. You know, one of the guys who's like a father figure to me, he's a longtime law enforcement officer in upstate New York. And there's a lot of those guys that are literally telling the officials, I'm not going to enforce these laws that are unconstitutional. And that takes a lot of courage on their part. And I know it's hard to stand up for what you believe in when it seems like against you. So again, my hat's off to those guys. And I think we need more of you guys out there who are willing to do that.
Well, there's a lot of us out there. It's just we are very much like a similar warrior profession, the quiet professionals. We just go out, we do the job, and try to take care of people and don't make it about a sensational kind of action or activity. Through my multimedia and public forums, as much as possible, I try to spread a lot of positive community interaction, things where people help each other out, just to try to offset a lot of that negativity that people are just blasted with on constantly negative news or fake news this or, just some of the crazy stations and the people that they put out there. And if you really look at the percentage of 1 minute of here's a kitten and 20 minutes of here's somebody stomping on a kitten, when in reality the incidence of violence versus peacefulness is the exact opposite. And it's really something that can be challenging, especially in the law enforcement profession, in the military profession. A lot of the individuals that are now anti-law enforcement were previously anti-war and anti-soldier. And now you'll find that they say, well, I support the soldier, but we shouldn't militarize the military-style equipment, shouldn't be out in the streets, we shouldn't give them the assault rifles that they mistakenly call an Armalite 15 or anything along those lines. And they're from the image, but then you look at the and the disparagement between the AK-47s and the execution of their officers on the street after being shot in the stomach and begging for their life. And I often wonder if our media would actually show just the uncensored, unedited photos, videos. You can Google this up. You can find it on YouTube and see the actual handheld camera phone footage of the officer being executed coldly, callously, as he laid on the floor with his hands up begging for his life. And it kind of paints a different picture, and I wonder how many people that were extreme left or extreme this way, extreme that way, might actually have a sense of reality check, even if it's only for a moment. And I think that's all that's really needed until you get to situations like New York City.
The media, they make a lot off from showing snippets, what's in their favor. If you don't mind, what do you think about the New York incident, the chokehold?
Well, first of all, being a jiu-jitsu instructor, being a combatives instructor, I know how to choke people. I've been choked. In fact, in my current Army unit, I've choked, I think, just about everyone out, completely unconscious, from my company commander on down to my buck privates. And they've choked me out, too. We've got plenty of YouTube videos that we keep private, but that we share with each other when we want to get our point across. And it exudes a level of trust in my junior enlisted, and it actually is a really pretty good team-building exercise, but definitely something to be done under extra hand, to say the least. And looking at that video, listening to the level of yelling, seeing that the person didn't lose consciousness, that was not a chokehold. There were 5 officers taking down a behemoth of a person who has a previous criminal record of doing exactly what he was accused of doing when the local businesses that were being hurt by his criminal activities had phoned the officers in for him. He resisted arrest. First of all, big no-no. If you're resisting arrest, you are obstructing, delaying an officer in the function of his duties. If this individual thought it was minor, well, again, it goes back to the municipal and city and state laws. Can't sell loose cigarettes or non-tax paid cigarettes. Pretty simple. So breaking the law, he's done it before. He's resisting officer's arrest, and he wasn't choked at all when he was placed in handcuffs. Where I think the fault lies, and this is just my personal opinion because I was not boots on the ground there, but just from what I could derive from it was something along the lines of the care and welfare of anyone that you take into custody is 100% that of the arresting officer. Whether it's cases of positional fixation in the back of a squad car to the violence that a crowd might try to incite upon somebody that they believe that might have been a child molester or something. Once that person is collared and in your custody, once you have detained them, their life is literally in your hands. Now, the delays between medical care from his reports of not being able to breathe, even if it's something that you consistently hear, oh, the cuffs are too tight, they hurt, I can't feel my arm, or I can't breathe, and the person says this for a good 15, 20 minutes, well, where are they getting the air to say it? So I could see where the officers would be a little callous towards that, but it ultimately is their responsibility as experienced, seasoned professionals to ensure that his life was in the best of care. And I think there was a dropping of the ball in that instance while they were in the process of the arrest before the EMS was there. And let's face it, this fat, out-of-shape individual decided just to use his mask to resist 5 police officers and had a heart attack later because of it. I think that sucks. I feel for his family, but there's definitely no need for riots, for ambushing and executing good law enforcement officers and their crews. They're just the way you look at it. When you have the mayor of New York City telling his son, I wouldn't trust the people that work for me because you're mixed and they might beat you down, and making public statements like that, and then wondering why a family of brothers and sisters, which is what the law enforcement community is, a family, takes exception and offense to that during the wake and the funeral of several of their officers. And it's it's pretty crazy when you look at individuals like Al Sharpton who just magically drive to wherever there's drama to incite more race baiting, to try to incite a race war, talking about, criminal laws and stuff. And the individual owes over $4.5 million in unpaid taxes. I think it was only 110 sent Martha Stewart to prison. So
yeah,
you got to wonder what the disparity here is. And you have these folks that are speaking to the media that are going out, what do we want? Dead cops. We want them now. You have multimedia sources, YouTube, Facebook, all these places where people are advocating violence against people that are actively out there risking their lives to try to protect and ensure their safety, to try to keep the drunk drivers off the streets, to try to keep the hard drugs out of children's hands, and to keep the gang violence out of the local small communities. And it's a pretty sad state considering the ignorance of a lot of the folks that are stepping up, people that are busting out of state, professional protest.
Mike, I sit there and I look at it, and it's to me, it seems as if you've got that hardcore left wing, and they're never honest about their intent, Going back to, even like the Weather Underground, they want to instill a communist society. Those people are now lobbyists, and they're supporting a lot of the politicians, and some of them are even in office today, pushing down oppressive legislation. And they're the ones sending the Al Sharptons out there, and the protesters, and the antagonizers, and, all that stuff. It almost seems as if this particular group of people, that there's a group of people out there that wants to create this conflict amongst the masses and in between the people and the authorities, only so that the government can come down more with even harsher and more oppressive legislation, so that ultimately at the end of the day we're all enslaved to their will. It almost seems like that to me. It's just a vicious circle.
People under your control is to have them fighting themselves, and they don't realize who's really steering them. And power wants things to move certain ways, you give them guns. Then when you want it to move back another way, you give bigger guns to the opposite group, so you can keep things moving back and forth indefinitely.
Yeah, it's Orwellian. It's a perpetual state of war.
Absolutely.
All right, so my next question is, and we're getting ready to spin things down a little bit. What's your take on the CDC's unreported monitoring of up to 1,400 suspected cases of Ebola?
Well, I think they're doing their job. It's a twofold task. Of course, they need to monitor any and all things from the simple common cold to the seasonal influenza viruses to potentially life-threatening diseases and practices. And at the same time, they have to do it in a manner that's not going to try to trigger the zombie apocalypse reaction in the U.S. population. And let's face it, we're all waiting for Z-Day. And when you look at this particular disease, Ebola, it's very difficult to contract. It takes prolonged, contact from a person who's already in an advanced case, and there's a lot of things that the public just doesn't understand. Coughing. You're not going to get it necessarily by sitting on a bus and somebody on the back of the bus has Ebola. And monitoring the potential suspected cases means they're paying attention to see if there's something more in the public than what there is. But they're trying to do it in a manner that's not going to cause people to up and panic, run around with the tinfoil on their hats and that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of on par with what they're supposed to do. The difficulty here is what we're doing as far as the public awareness of Ebola, the available resources for people to realize how simple it is and to prevent it. Just avoid some of the people that have it. Wash your hands. If you're going to be exposed to someone, use protective measures. Make sure that there's those barriers if you have to provide CPR or something to someone. And just common sense things. Soap and warm water and washing your hands are the biggest counter to Ebola out there. The way that our food services are prepared here versus some of the wild places out in Africa where people are surviving out in the bush or out playing, and their medicinal sanitation and their food preparation is vastly inferior to of the first world nations. So these developing nations are basically cesspools and breeding grounds of a lot of these diseases. And that's where you're going to see these explosions come out from that. Here in the United States, is it possible? Oh, sure, anything's possible, but it's very unlikely. And part of that is because we have like the Center for Disease Control monitoring any kind of potential outbreaks, especially when there's something as serious or life-ending as Ebola. And we also have some amazing medical breakthroughs just in the past 6 months alone that can lead to proper vaccination against it as well.
All right, so how do you prepare? How does Mike Warren prepare for, the shit at the fan, worst case emergency scenario?
Well, I study. I'm a lifelong learner. I've enrolled myself through universities that specialize in firearms technology and gunsmithing, specialized trade crafts and skills. I've enrolled in courses in surveillance, counter-surveillance. I consistently enroll in new seminars to learn under new methods of martial arts and continue to practice and train so that I'm physically ready. As a soldier, of course, I'm expected to meet physical fitness requirements and training requirements, and that meets a lot of those training needs for preparedness. As a civil affairs specialist, I picked the MOS so that I can understand exactly how a host nation and disaster relief support works and try to do everything I can to allow myself to be prepared. But the key is that I try to do it in a manner that doesn't impede upon my day-to-day life. I don't want to have to dig and dig and dig a foxhole all the time. I just need to know where safe places I can go if there's XYZ type of emergency, an earthquake versus a fire versus zombies versus a race war outbreak or any other potential Armageddon type scenarios. And the best thing can do is receive the knowledge to be able to do things themselves and to teach others. I'm finishing up my Associates in Science and Firearms Technology and Gunsmithing after my regular degrees, going through Sonoran Desert Institute. They send me lower 80% receivers, all the parts to build my own AR-10 or AR-15. And I take the materials, the jigs, everything, I put them together. These are weapons that I keep that'll be my own. There's no serial number or, as it's accurately known, as a federal trade tax stamp on the side of these weapons because they're not transferring. I know every aspect of that weapon inside and out, its functions, how to repair it. And if, worst case scenarios, I find myself out in the wild, so to speak, in the jungles of inner cities gone wild, I can improvise, I can adapt, and I can survive and help protect others. And I think it's just a level of information. For example, your listeners listening to the show right now got a few ideas. They learned, I can blindfold myself and wrestle. Wow, you mean I could start with focus mitts blindfolded and see what happens if I'm in a blinded situation, if I get sprayed with a chemical agent or if it's dark, and they now have their mind thinking about these options and opportunities, and they follow through with action. They learn that there's a university that's nationally accredited where they can get a legitimate degree, understand all things about ballistics, trajectories, firearms, gunsmithing course, how to do maintenance on everything from black powder to modern-day military-grade weapons. Just that lifelong learner. That's generally the first cue of a survivor. We don't take a situation as hopeless. We just look for it as a new challenge.
Well, that's a great way to prepare for things. And like G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle, right?
And the other half is killing the enemy. It's a secret.
I agree. Hey, Mike, you've said some very interesting things. One of them, since you first brought it up in conversation to me, and again today, it's that college course where you could get a degree in firearms technology. That's very interesting to me, and I know you're playing a pivotal part in that. So could you kind of send out your plugs to what you got going on out there and share it with our listeners so that they can get the opportunity to do some of the stuff that you're doing or be part of what you're doing?
Absolutely. The university is called Sonoran Desert Institute, or SDI. Their website's sdi.edu/Mike. And they have many different programs, from certificate programs all the way up to the associate's degree. Everything is hands-on. It's at home. They send everything to you. I've taken online classes before for my other degrees and was absolutely fed up to the gills with the people that were extreme this view, extreme that view, opinions that had nothing to do with the subject material that we're speaking on. I was forced, in order to receive a passing grade, to comment and intellectually try to steer a conversation onto the topic away from however it may have been ambushed by this lefty Lucy or righty Richard, left and right, and it had nothing to do with the classes. So when I found Sonoran Desert Institute and said, well, we're distance learning, we're distance education council, we're certified, we're nationally accredited, I'm like, okay, let's look at these classes. Wow, it's all at home. They send it to me. I email them my answers. They send materials out throughout the different courses. When I started with the advanced gunsmithing course, next thing I'm getting trigger pull gauges, I'm getting scope bore sight mount kits, I'm getting my Arizona stones and a hickory rough stock for Remington 700 that I'm hand rasping down. And they sent me the rasps for it. Checkering, I'm learning how to do that. They send all these parts to you. It's like Christmas year round. And the materials are really fun. The lessons aren't too long or anything like that. And if they go to the website, they can look down and they have a option there because they just try to collect information about the person to dial them into the correct program for them. So when they talk about how they hear about it, they just need to click on that other, then type your blog here, your show. And when they look for the agent involved, there's a list of about 7 of us that are recruiters. I like the school so much, I contacted them and got myself brought on board as a recruiter for them. And you'll see Mikey Warren, and that just lets them know that you've heard about it from me, and it helps them to basically dial in where their question should be coming from. And there's really good sources that are out there. You can YouTube a lot of information, learn a lot about the weapons, but it's different when you're actually getting a nationally accredited degree. And we send you all the parts and all the materials and tools for your specific programs for free. It's all part of the enrollment. My fellow veterans can use their GI Bill for this. Folks that qualify can use the vocational rehab once they go through the VA for that. It's a little bit of a lengthier process, and they have some more papers to go through. But if you look at it in the context of you're getting a free certificate program and a free firearm that's not registered anywhere that you make yourself, that's I think a good motivator to handle a couple pages of paperwork, or at least bribe your old retired S1 buddies to do it for you.
Now, Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've got a question about that for myself because I'm actually really interested in doing this. I haven't used my GI Bill yet. I've still got some time on it. But because of what I do and I'm gone so much and I go to places where I don't have internet access, what are the time crunches that you're put on to do these courses?
Well, to begin with, you don't necessarily have to have internet access to do these courses. We send the books to you. You have a PDF with that. For example, in the gunsmithing course, 25 to 35 pages of the material that's focused, that's directly to the bone, that's all the important information, multiple choice questions at the end. I'm sure you can get a hold of a 5-minute internet cafe to send an email out into that. And if you're overseas or out of touch for that, the schools, we keep the business side of the school very small. We want just the absolute experts that are writing the material, that are getting accredited, that are taking care of the processes, and you can contact them with questions with that as well. But you let them know, hey, I've got a deployment. I started my course. I deployed to Afghanistan with a, let's say, one of the SOC units that doesn't exist, if you follow. And I was doing some support work for them for several months, came back, picked up right where I left off, because they try to have you do at least a module a month, depending upon the program that you have, but they understand that there's going to be times where you're just not going to be able to, and you just let them know and they work with you.
That is awesome. I'm definitely going to be looking into this very soon.
Well, I think it's something that you'll have a lot of fun with, and, I mean, you're going to learn how to do repairs, customizations, renovate old guns, how to set them up for employment if you're going to have a shop that you want to run. You'll learn a lot of everything from accurizing to ballistics to metal refinishing, engraving, and all the principles and all the legal rules that to work for the federal firearms licensing process as well. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, building your own guns for guys like ourselves is a blast. I mean, that is the epitome of the warrior spirit. What the real motivation for my enrolling in the course is actually basic training in the Army. I got there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to master this Armalite 15 style weapon, this M16. I'm going to take this. I'm going to know everything about it. And they're like, we are going to teach you everything about it, disassemble it, put it back together. Oh, but don't touch anything inside of the trigger housing components. But wait, the cool looking parts. Oh, and don't touch anything in the gas tube or we'll kill you. And then, you know, I felt like I wanted to be Drill Sergeant Hulkenberg, lighten up, Francis, you know, and take this thing apart. Well, I can finally do that now. In fact, in my reserve unit, one of my additional pieces of unit armor, I'm saving everybody tax dollars. You're welcome, America, just by able to make these advanced repairs to these weapons because I'm nationally accredited and certified. I've got a degree in it, and that's higher than most of the private contractors that are charging thousands of dollars a year to unit just do basic, simple repairs. And it's It's a lot of fun. It's a full 60 credit hour course. If you already have college, they look at all the accredited college that you have, so it may be a lot quicker for some individuals that already have the degrees to get that. But I mean, anytime you go into a course and you're getting a fully stocked gun cleaning kit from 50 cal all the way down to 22, and it's so pretty in this like nice cherry wood box. I don't even want to clean stuff with it. I just want to look at it. You get your screwdriver sets, brass and smithing hammers, drift punches, your rifle stock blanks, pull and drop gauges, checkering tools, templates, trigger pull gauges, needle files, honing stones, swivel installation jigs. They gave me a nice electric motor tool, hand Dremel, and all kinds of stuff. Catalogs on how to get materials and replacement parts. It's an amazing, amazing program, and it's run by individuals that want to help give back to the veteran community, and it's an amazing school. And I talk about them often. I go out to gun shows and the Association of the United States Army shows and get people hip and savvy to it whenever I'm not running things over at the Academy and doing a lot of the other stuff that I just happen to find myself involved with.
Well, let's talk. First of all, I'm going to be completely in. I'm definitely going to register for this because I don't want my GI Bill to go to waste, and I can't think of a better way to augment the things that I'm already doing professionally and personally than to get signed up for this degree plan. I'm definitely going to be in. So you're an excellent recruiter, Mike.
Well, I'm just looking for the good people to step on board, and the program recruits itself. I mean, free guns, good education, fun times, and good experiences. It's really not much of anything to sell, quote unquote.
Well, my next question is, tell us a little bit about some of the other things you got going on. Look, first of all, I want to thank you very much for introducing me to the shock knife. Now, I've pushed the shock knife, I've used the shock knife, done a lot of stuff with it, and I can't get over how often people think that, this is something that I was like coming up with. I never heard about the shock knife till I stepped into your school, and you're like, hey, you're really going to like this toy. And you showed me, and I was like, oh, my God, that is awesome. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your school, some of the things you guys are doing there, and some of the other stuff that you got going on.
Absolutely. Well, the school that I'm running right now, well, I say more or less runs me because once I get in my teaching mode, it's self-sacrifice. I've sacrificed marriages over this school just to take care of soldiers and to make sure things are done right. We call it the Academy of Martial Studies. Simply put, we're constantly studying. We don't necessarily want to get caught behind the mystique of it being an art or anything like that. It's because we take everything that works and try to make it work better and then constantly look for ways to improve upon it, from training methods to finding new tools and unique things like that shock knife. And our website is pretty simple, tappingwon'tsaveyou.com. And speaking of that, it reminds me I got to get a hold of my webmaster, Noel, and make sure that the links up to your locations and stuff are with our affiliates and stuff, and I'll get on that this week. But tappingwon'tsaveyou.com has just some basic information about the Academy. Our facilities right now are co-located with Radon Tactics, which is a private military contracting group that I work with, and 3-7 Public Shooting Range run by Sephardic and Cephalic Special Forces master trainers and instructors, 18 Delta and trainers and instructors that do a lot of amazing, amazing programs. Those of you that are still active duty or the National Guard or Reserves, hit us up. There's some programs that we can approach you with that we can give you college credit for while accomplishing your warrior tasks like TCCC or Tactical Combat Casualty Care and live tissue medical training, the whole 9 yards. And that link to see more on the Radon side is Radon Tactics, and that's Radon spelled R-A-I-D-O-N, tactics.com. And when you go to the Academy's tappingwon'tsaveyou.com website, you'll see some links to YouTube, and from there you can find my YouTube channel. And speaking of the shock knife, I actually have a little clip explaining one of the basics drills, which leads to your defending the serpent technique, but it's coming from an Aikido basis of Sakai. And we'll see similar techniques with friends of mine like Guru Crafty Dog or Mark Denny and his Dog Brothers Martial Arts Association. Until people start getting more than 2 arms and 2 legs, as Bruce Lee once made the statement, you're going to only have so many effective ways to punch, kick, or stop somebody from punching or kicking you. So you'll see a lot of similar techniques there, and we show how the shock knife works, what it looks like, and some basic drills to kind of give the idea of what's out there. I never believe in hoarding or keeping secret techniques like many Chinese martial arts masters profess to do. I believe in putting it out there. I believe if it works, it's going to work. Knowing how it works isn't necessarily a weakness on my part. If you find a way to defeat that, then I'm still studying. I'm going to find a way to continue to improve. So it's a constant growth process. And
if you don't, Mike, if you don't mind, would I be able to put a link up to your website up on my page as well, under like people that we affiliate with?
It'd be an honor to be up there. On ours, you're going to be right alongside of some of our coaches and mutual good friends like Dan the Beast Severn, the Gracie Academy, Go Korchevichian, and Judo Gene LaBelle, and all these folks that we work with as well come out. And since I'm pretty lucky, I'll put it to you that way, with the gift of gab to be able to bring some of the top fighters in the world like yourself and the Beast and GoCore to come out to our small schools and work with our soldiers firsthand. And it's just been an amazing process, and you never know who you're going to see coming through these doors.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you've got some pretty big names that have come through there. Man, you guys got one hell of a program going on there. If you're in the Fort Bragg area, look up Mikey, look up the Academy. They got everything going on out there. The Radon Tactics thing is also very interesting, Mike. How are you involved with them?
Well, I'm their head combatives guy. I also do their business development and their capture management. I help out with some of the, let's just say, specialized training programs that are more squirreled and secret or anything along those lines. And I do what I can to just to help out. Frankie McRae, Special Forces Team Sergeant, he was an 18 Delta before that. He ran Sephardic. He wrote the Cephalic Manual in 2006. Guy's phenomenal. Lifetime learner. He's out of first group himself, so he's very big on the martial arts and hand-to-hand study as well. And we just really click and hit it off. He's got an amazing facility, 270-degree live-fire shoot house, known distance ranges, pistol, rifle, shotgun. We blow stuff up out there. We involve vehicles. We have 3-gun competitions that are designed to incorporate common sense and combat tactics like the Infidel Gunfighter League. They support the Green Beret Foundation, helping our quiet professionals who've been wounded and their families in combat. And it's just an amazing place family run by a bunch of amazing warriors. And honestly, I'm the little guy that gets to run around there since I don't carry that pretty amazing long tab on my shoulder. But they work with me, I work with them, and we just do what we can to try to get these programs out to every soldier and every civilian that needs it. All your NRA courses are covered there. The whole 9 yards. It's a pretty amazing place, and we have facilities and ranges on all 4 corners of the United States, and there's some pretty awesome stuff that's coming down the link as far as what we're doing around the world as well. And on the newsletter links that you have, you'll actually see some of the Warrior Scout stories talking about what Radon Tactics and everybody's doing to try to make the world a little bit safer as well.
Well, Mike, what I want to do is when we put up the show on the page where the show is actually posted under the YouTube video that will have our dialogue on there. Underneath it, I'll have a special section for you and everything that you got going on. I'm also going to throw a link on there to their website so that other people can look them up as well.
Okay. And for those of you that are already out there building guns, just friend of mine, Max Devlin, E7 type, is one of them psychological operators that works in the U.S. Army Reserves, been combat deployed many times. He runs a company called Maverick Firearms and custom makes 80% lowers, 1911 80% lowers as well. His uppers, he just sent me a couple sets to test out here. And he's actually based out of the Reno, Nevada area. And, being a fellow veteran and stuff, I wanted to let you know about him too. And I'll make sure that you get a link to his website so individuals that are looking for above mil-spec grade materials, from the metals used to the precision cuts and grades, and actually want something that goes beyond just match grade as well. He's definitely a guy who can get the best parts at the absolute lowest prices to your listeners out there that are already in the building industry, so to speak.
We'll throw that out there. In fact, what I'm thinking about doing is putting up a separate page that's got a lot of really awesome businesses and a lot of really great people to get in touch with for people who want to expand their horizons per se. So I definitely think that will definitely find its way on that page for sure.
Awesome. And I'll make sure you have all this information. And I think he might actually be a good person for you to meet. Hopefully I can introduce you to him sometime.
I would love it. If you could hook us up, that would be very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike, I know, look, man, I've been taking up so much of your precious time, but, man, it's so great having you on because you're so well-versed in a lot of things, and hopefully maybe we could do this again in the future.
Always ready. Always have an opinionated mind like myself, since I'm always asking questions. and I'm always excited to be part of the greater community and trying to just get information out to everybody.
Well, Mike, thanks for, number one, being a friend, and thanks for coming out to the show today, spending your time to call in anyhow. And any last words that you want to say to our listeners before we cut out here?
Sure thing. Hey, don't let the media wrap you up. Stay focused on the 10-meter target, as we like to call it, what's within your immediate scope of influence, and constantly look for the truth. Don't take things at face value, and if you can't find a good person out in the world, it means you're either not looking or you're not being one.
Awesome words of wisdom. Mike, thanks again, and hey, we'll definitely stay in touch, man, and I got that newsletter I'll be sending you out that's got a really nice write-up with you guys on it, and hopefully you'll like it.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm already a subscriber.
All right, so I'm going to get